Welcome back to another video where I turn this cube into this wallpaper. Big shout out to the members of this channel: Rochelle Victoria for being a sleepy dumpling for 27 months, Anna Vore for being a dumpling for 21 months, Max B for being a sleepy dumpling for 15 months, Neo Tono for being a dumpling for 16 months, and Oasis of Peace for being a sleepy dumpling for 2 months. Thank you all so much for your support. If you want to become a member, you can click the join button down below. You will get monthly shoutouts as well as cool badges, emotes, and monthly wallpapers. So this month wallpaper, I did a quick sketch, as you can see on screen, and I kind of followed it as closely as I possibly could, because I find having even the roughest of sketches helps me to kind of just have a plan and an idea for the wallpapers. I'm hoping to make them maybe a bit more cuter and kind of work with more color inside of them, like more maybe pinks and purples and blues and stuff like that, just make them more vibrant in general. So we'll see what I can whip up for the month of, September, next month. So for August, this is our wallpaper. So the plan was a robot in a very like nature-filled area with lots of greens, kind of having a very big contrast between the robot and the background, as well as having some kind of like machinery or like lights and stuff. Not machinery, but more like it was supposed to feel kind of like a world with, and I see art like this a lot, like a world with robots in nature, and because they contrast so much, it looks very unique. I don't know if that's helpful for my idea, but that's kind of the thought I had in my head. So this was my first attempt ever at doing something like that, and I think it turned out okay. There were some things, because there is a deadline and a timeline I give myself every month to get these wallpapers done, and it was a pretty busy month with doctor's appointments and things like that. I just didn't have as much time as I wanted to dedicate to the smaller kind of details, but I got what I could done, and I'm happy with at least what I could get done in the amount of time I did have to spend on the wallpaper this month. I think I did okay. Hopefully next month I'll have much more time to dedicate to coming up with an idea and then executing it. So as you can see, we just worked on the robot. It's pretty straightforward and pretty simple shapes. I tried to make it as easy to model as possible, and definitely I've been noticing I've been making a lot of very bad mistakes with my modeling. I think I just really need to brush up on some of the coursework and stuff I went through. There's still a lot more coursework that I can keep going through. That's the best thing about online courses, is you can get to it as you have the time and keep learning on your own time. So the robot was very simple modeling, and then started kind of adding some background. I knew I wanted to have these two pillars. They're actually drawn in the example image that I made for myself, but there were going to be these two pillars with like screwed on panel plates. They were supposed to be very huge, like much bigger than our frog and robot main focus characters, and it's kind of just to show that in this world, maybe it was more of an industrial world and things have grown over it, or maybe, something like that has gone on in this world to try and give more story. I've really wanted to work on story being told with backgrounds or smaller objects, and I'm getting better, but it will obviously always take a lot of practice and a lot of years and months and time to get really, really good at it. So any practice I can get. Sometimes for a certain month with a wallpaper, I'll practice something specific. So next month is either going to be character focused or small items focused. Like this month on this wallpaper, I really wanted to focus on filling the background with like the grass, for example, which we'll get to, or having just more detailed items to make a fuller picture and kind of have the world tell a story. I really wish I got more time with it, but sometimes you just have to end a project, learn what you can from it, and move on, and then apply that to the next project. So yeah, like for example, lily pads is something I actually did for my project in the wallpaper, members wallpaper. I think it was for June or May or something like that, was the frog playing video games. He's playing video games on an Atari. There was a lily pad carpet, so I had to kind of figure out how to model that shape without being too destructive in my very amateur and very beginner modeling with lots of mistakes. So I've become more comfortable and confident in the way I go about that, like you can see here, and like I made them look much more the way I wanted to. I definitely have to work, I think, on giving them even more details. They were very quick, simple, low poly, which means not a lot of like, how do I describe like a poly, like all the points that you'll see sometimes. There's basically very little of them. And because I was going to be adding grass, I decided to make a lot of things very low poly just so my computer wouldn't crash, because it did actually crash a few times. So yeah, just kind of learning the limits of my PC. Even though it is a really good PC, there's still limits that it has, and learning to work within them, but also kind of executing my vision at the same time. So the lily pads ended up nice, but I think I want to work on giving them, you know, harder edges, kind of sinking them in, like more of a typical lily pad or illustrative lily pad you would see. So that's my goal for the next time I make lily pads. But I've gotten much faster at modeling those. The frog, I've done different kinds of frogs before. So this one actually had his eyes farther out, as you saw. And yeah, and I also wanted to add the cabin, which is what we're getting to at this point. So the cabin was in my mind just like a little hut cabin, just something that maybe our robot character is living in at this time, or maybe collects things and puts them inside of it. You know, just like a little space for our robot character to kind of live and go maybe in the evenings, which is why there's actually a light that will be on inside of it towards the ending. So I actually hollow it out, as you can see, and just so the lighting, I really wanted it to glow in the background and just really stand out. Even though it is quite far away, I knew the background would be a bit blurred, so I knew it wouldn't be a big focus, but I still think it adds a lot to the scene to have it there, and have that glow coming out, and kind of coming out from the windows and the door, which I add here, which you can kind of see. So this is just me modeling it. I also knew I wanted to have wood, a wooden structure to also contrast the greens and the blues of the water that are more in the forefront. So that was also why I put a living area. It was a part of the story, and also I don't know, like a design, but more of a design aspect. I'm also getting better at using the bool tool and cutting, or boolean tool, I think, and cutting out things to make better shapes and better, cleaner cutouts. Still have to work on it, but it's getting better for sure. I'm getting better at it. So here I'm kind of just, you know, working on placing the ground compared to the water, and just trying to really set up the scene better now that I kind of have the main portions set, like the giant tubes and the house, and I kind of had to decide how far away I was gonna put that. So things like that, and stretching out the ground so that I kind of wanted there to be a little hill, which I kind of try just to kind of give the background a more interesting look, so to kind of lift some of it, like I did with the water before, which I've done before with water, but kind of doing it with the ground so that there was variation, and you know, not everything is just flat. The ground very much has lots of movement and flow to it in natural areas, so that was kind of my goal with that. And then adding in wooden kind of pillars, like, you know, the house that our robot friend lives in is elevated as well. I just thought that would look really nice. I don't know if you can see it as well as I wanted because it is so far in the background, but I still think sometimes these smaller things, like just adding even that little elevated raised platform for the home, can add a lot to the scene. So that's kind of what I've been learning and working with, looking at other people's decisions when they make art or illustrative images and trying to understand their decisions and why they did that. So that's kind of why I've been focusing on that and kind of learning from other things I see people doing, and I'm trying to understand why they went that way in their design choices and things like that. So now I had just a background sky because it just helps me to kind of see the scene, I don't know, without the whole gray forever infinity looking point of view in the program. Just having that, you know, sky background just helps me to kind of see how the image is coming along. So I added that in and curved it, and then started adding trees, which these trees could have been done so much more efficiently and properly, but this was the point in the project where it was a while that I had been working on it and I was getting worried I wouldn't get it out on time for the members. I usually try and get the wallpapers done by the 20th of the month so members can get the perks on time, but this month I was getting a bit too close. There was just a lot going on. So I wanted to basically multiply the flowers around like a circle, but as you can see, I did it in this real janky way, just copying and essentially pasting the leaves that I made, which just makes a jumble. And it's actually why you will see the trees are not finished on top. I just kind of did it so, you know, they'll be out of focus just to have the leaves. There were also supposed to be more variations of trees, and there were supposed to be vines around different areas, and there were supposed to be vines around the tubes, but I couldn't get to that in time. I was just running out of time, so some months I have more time to work on things. Hopefully September is a month I get more time because I wanted to spend a lot more time on this project. So, you know, hopefully I can keep improving, keep learning how to manage time and understanding how much time a project could take me based on my ideas. So this is the point where I realize some things are floating a bit, and I'm kind of fixing the robot to be in our sitting pose, which you can see I've zoomed in on the bottom left, trying to get, you know, my little janky drawing, trying to do what I had imagined in my head, which was the robot. What I wanted was you to actually see the robot's legs through the water, but I just, again, was running out of time, had a time crunch, and couldn't figure it out for some reason, like how to get the reflection to show through as much as I wanted while also reflecting the robot back into the water. You'll see what I mean when we get into the texturing part. But yeah, that was kind of the plan, which is why I had to bend the legs just right and at the feet in just the right positions. The arms also, for some reason, it gave me some trouble. I don't know if it's just the way I went about doing them, but they did take a while. I did have to redo them quite a bit, do a save state, and then end up going back. I cut out actually a lot of things I struggled with this one, just because it was quite long. It was about 6 hours of video captured, and the project actually took me 8 hours. But I forgot to press record on the last 2 hours or so, 2.5 hours. So unfortunately, you won't see the entire process, and all you miss is just the final coloring and a little bit of the final lighting. So you do get to see pretty much the whole project, but for some reason I forgot to press record, which is rare. Usually I make sure everything's recording before I open the program and everything, so I do apologize about that. But yeah, working on positioning, of our main characters, and once that's set, like our focal characters, I just start adding the lily pads, as you can see, some more, which I wanted to have color variation, and then adding these boxes, which I do end up adding more later. I just decided it looked better to have all of these boxes that are technology that also don't really fit in this environment, but they do match the pillars and our robot. So these are kind of like objects that kind of don't belong in the scene, but they kind of are in the scene, and it just works to more storytelling. And then I added grass, which I just basically made those 3 very stylized little low poly little bulb things, put them together with different variations of size, and then turn them into a particle system so they could work as grass, and then adding that particle system to our grass area. And I think it looks okay. Sometimes I'm still trying to understand particle systems. It's how you do things like fur, or just multiply things over a space, which is what I've done with the grass, as you can see. I think they looked pretty cool, but you know, I still struggle with getting the exact look I want out of the particle system, so I do turn it off for a bit, because particle systems are something my computer has a really hard time with, depending on how dense I want the system to be, so how thick the hair is, or how thick this grass was going to be. So now I'm just kind of finished. The frog didn't have eyes, which I forgot, and then adding in these boxes, which do end up having lights to show they belong to the technology, and kind of setting up the pillars and stuff closer to where things were supposed to be. And then we move into lighting and textures, and here is where usually it's my favorite part, this part, because this is when I can see my scene coming to life, essentially, and I get to see just the image come more into focus, it feels like. I don't know if that makes sense. This is also where I realize some things are floating, like you can see our frogs floating a bit, so I will fix those things later. But I decided to have the robot's eyes glow, because I thought it would look nice off the reflection of the water. So just adding in some eyes, just quick, and then going into wired mode, just so I can see where the lights are more clearly. But I wasn't set on the eyes when I did them. I just decided to leave it and then keep working on some smaller details on the robot, and then adding lights where I could into different objects and things, adding water. This was the part where I was like, okay, I know I wanted to be a little bit of this water to be a little greeny, a little greenish, not super clear. It's kind of, it's kind of having that emerald-ish, but with more blues. I don't know how to explain it, but I got pretty close to the color in the final image. And then, yeah, I couldn't get it to reflect, which is what I was doing before. So I just decided to move on, and if I had time, I'd go back and try and make it the reflective point I wanted it to be, to see the legs through the water. Basically make it look thinner, you know what I mean? Make the water look thinner. I don't know if that makes sense. But yeah, so then this is where I'm trying to do it, and it's not working. So just adding color to trees, lily pads. Again, I played with the water quite a bit, adding wooden texture to the trees, to the house, just trying to bring it to life in that way. The lighting, I did struggle with a lot. I'm not sure why. The past 2 projects I have struggled with lighting immensely. I don't know why. It's like my brain has just been having like a huge brain fart. I don't know, people still say that. I was having a huge brain fart for a while, trying to wrap my head around how I want to light a scene. And I don't know, I was having a really hard time with this one especially. It was very frustrating that like the lighting just wasn't doing what I wanted it to do. So yeah, like the lighting in the gaming frog one ended up being very much what I envisioned. And I just think because I got so close with that one, when I move on into the next project and it's not working the way it did in the last one, I'm like, what am I forgetting or what am I not thinking about? So, the process can be frustrating, but I always try to just take a break and move on to a different part of the image, or even just take a full break, walk away and come back, So that's good advice I would give. I think is good advice anyway to give people who are maybe working on something, a project, whether it's an art project or you're building something or, you're doing anything. Take a break and just, take a minute to gather your thoughts. Maybe don't even look at the thing you're making anymore and then come back to it. So yeah, just keep adding the textures. This part's kind of repetitive. A lot of the textures were similar. Some of them were also not working the way I wanted them to. But it's okay. Sometimes we get frustrated with a project, but you gotta just keep moving on, because otherwise you'll be there forever just constantly trying to fix things that maybe at this time are out of your control. So this is actually the point where my computer ends up crashing. And you know what? I actually wonder if after this crash is why I forgot to turn off or turn on the next recording, because the next one you can see I'm working on like a texture where there's some rust, but it didn't end up looking very nice on the robot. So I'm kind of playing with it here again, playing with the IOR, trying to get that right texture of the water that I wanted and that see-through look. So I'm kind of playing with that, and I think that's the last recording before I fix the robot's situation. So I apologize that footage is missing. It's not on my computer, so I didn't record it. In the final look, I added more background items and the lighting really came together. I hope you like it. I think it came out really good compared to the frustrations and the things I had to overcome. It did end up looking pretty good, and I'm excited to move on to the next project. So thank you so much to the members for supporting the channel. I hope you enjoyed this month's wallpaper, and if you'd like it, you can always become a member. I appreciate you all. Remember to have sweet dreams.